This is the Man Up Podcast, the doctor's guide to men's health. Each week on our podcast, we interview the top specialists of the field on various topics in men's health. You have questions that you are too afraid to ask, we have the answers. This week, we have another Perspectives episode, Living with Male Infertility. My name is Dr. Kevin Chu, and I'm joined as always with my co-host, Dr. Justin Dubin. What's up, Justin? How you doing?
What's up, Kev? So we're going to talk a little bit before we get into the interview. And as we're recording this, it's actually National Infertility Awareness Week. So
that's correct.
The interview that we're going to be following with is right on theme of that, maybe just a couple days late to the party. But obviously a very, very important topic that you and I both deal with a lot. And the thing is, I think people just really don't know the numbers behind infertility, right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. And, infertility actually affects I would say a good amount of people. About 1 in 7 to 8 couples actually go deal with infertility. Actually, to kind of back up a little bit, infertility, the definition of it is actually if you've been trying to conceive for the past year and have been unable to successfully conceive. That's a general definition of what infertility is. But yeah, 1 in 8 couples generally deal with it. But Justin, there's a little bit more to it, right? There's a differentiation between male and female factor in terms of infertility.
Correct. And, it's one of these things where when we think about couple infertility, for whatever reason, a lot of it always points to the female partner.
Right.
And believe it or not, I think we know this, it takes 2 to tango, right? Like
yes,
there are,
yes, it does.
I guess everyone kind of knows that, right? It takes both parts, a male and a female partner, to have a child, at least conceive naturally by natural means.
Correct.
Surprisingly, a male factor aspect can play a role in up to 50% of couples struggling with fertility, and has actually been seen to be a sole contributor in about 20 to 30% of cases of couples struggling with fertility. So this is really actually an important part of a fertility evaluation when couples are struggling with this kind of thing, right, Kev?
Yeah, I think the general kind of mindset when people think of infertility, just like you said, they immediately think like, oh, maybe, the female, the wife needs to go get checked up. Something's going on. We actually have a stat here. About 1.2 million women per year are predominantly seen in infertility clinics. That's compared to only 240,000 men. And so when you're kind of talking about these numbers, there's a bit of a disconnect, right?
Huge disconnect.
And so I think there could be a couple factors for why there's such a difference. Just I'm sure you can shine on some of these factors why aren't men getting worked up for their infertility?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with this, first off, this stigma that we have to check the female. It's probably going to be a female aspect. We just showed you data or told you data that's clearly not always the case. In fact, 50% of the time may not be the case. Right. I think there's also this idea that people don't really think about it. They just, they're not educated on the fact that this is a possibility. And a lot of that, when you're talking with your partner, I think a lot of guys are even scared to go make the trip or make that appointment, even when it is suggested by their partner. And why do you think that is, Kevin?
I think a lot of it is the impetus for why we are making the show in the first place, right?
Right.
Guys just don't want to go see the doctor, They just don't want to. And, especially when it comes to fertility, there's a little bit of a linkage to possibly your masculinity. I think there's a lot of things that, guys just don't want to admit or maybe face it. So, I think with more information and, things that, me and you deal with a lot on a daily basis. I think the more informed guys are, the more they might be more willing to come in, get checked out if they need to. you know?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's one of those ideas. I'm not sick unless I go to the doctor, right? We see it all the time. I'm not sick because I haven't gone to the doctor. They haven't told me I'm sick. So I'm not infertile. I don't have this idea that, maybe I feel like I'm potentially less of a man. But I think another aspect of it is like you go to the doctor and they're like, oh gosh, your sperm is low, or you have no sperm, or there's a problem with you. Then you're like, oh shit, like what am I going to do now? And I think a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of things that we can do to at least help you, whether it's testosterone levels, evaluating your hormone levels, looking at your semen parameters, giving you medications, giving you tips on lifestyle changes, giving you potential surgical repair of your issues. There's a lot of options that we have in our toolkit to help you get better. But it goes back to everything that you said. Only 20% of male partners are getting evaluated. We can't help you unless we see you. And I think that comes into why we're talking about these things and why this National Infertility Awareness Week is very important. What do you think?
I completely agree with you, Justin. I think that's what's so great about these awareness weeks, to kind of raise awareness on things that maybe are kind of falling a little bit towards the back. And, male infertility is one of the things that I think should be brought a little bit more to the limelight. And just like you said, I think you touched upon it nicely. There's a lot of things in our toolkit that we can do. And, a lot of it is time, though. Fertility takes time. The sperm process takes 3 months, So these are things you shouldn't wait on. These are things that you should kind of,
excellent point.
You got some kind of a thinking that something's going on, just go in and get checked out,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that, if you're worried, go talk to someone. It's okay to see your primary care doctor first. You may not have access to the appropriate urologist, and you can get a referral. If you need a referral from a reproductive endocrinologist, who are often the ones who actually refer to us, so there's a lot of people you can ask to get the information that you need. And I think that exactly what you said, the reason of this podcast is man up. We're going to try to make you the best man. We're trying to elevate you to be the best you possible. And a lot of that starts with going to see your doctor, especially with infertility. And, we also want to, it's important we take that burden off of the female partner, right? You love your partner. You're going through this process with them. It's stressful enough that they're the one, maybe it's like, oh, focus on you. I think even if, just by going to see the doctor takes a little bit of stress on it. It's a process together. You're a couple, you're going through this together. And, I think it's appropriate to at least do your part by getting the workup that you need. You probably do need.
I think you're right on, Justin. Just a little tangential. The minute you said elevate consciousness, I was just thinking about this TV show I'm watching, this We Crash TV show. You watching this?
I didn't. I think I've watched like the first 4 episodes. I saw the documentary, which I really enjoyed. Yeah. Is it good?
Well, the mission of WeWork is to elevate consciousness
which is
of the world, whatever that means.
Incredible mission statement for a working space company, which is now
that's correct,
kind of dead, but rest in peace.
That's
I guess
correct.
It's coming back. I don't know. That's good.
But yeah, just like you said, it's a very stressful time for, both partners. So I'm hoping, this episode, by, someone that's been, very willing to come share their experience with us. And we're very fortunate about their infertility journey.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this episode. A lot of men are not willing to talk about these topics. We were very, very lucky to get Gareth on and talk about his journey. And I think a lot of what you will hear about his journey and the result of what happens to him will be surprising for a lot of people. And I think how he explains his reaction may even be more surprising to a lot of people who may be struggling in this process. But it's a really wonderful story. And I think we need a lot more people like Gareth out there to tell their stories and kind of normalize this situation. So what do you say, Kev? Should we move on to the interview?
Let's jump right in.
All right. I'm really excited for our guest today. We're joined by Gareth Landy, all the way from Ireland. He is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about a very special topic, male infertility, and also Klinefelters. So Gareth has Klinefelters, and we're really honored to have him on and to talk about this and talk about his journey. Welcome, Gareth.
Hey, thanks, lads. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being on and sharing your whole journey with us. I think a lot of listeners are going to really appreciate and learn a lot from our talk today.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing that guys don't want to talk about is their fertility status. So you're one of the few guys who I've ever met who's willing to actually talk about it. So we really appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. Will I just dive straight in? Will I go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess we might as well start with the question that I just stated. You know, why do you think it is that guys don't want to talk about fertility, and why are they uncomfortable talking about this topic?
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up. So I've been wrestling with this concept in my mind like for years now. I will get into it, but I found out in 2017, and it's 2022 now, so it's 5 years. And going, why? Like, because Ireland and UK and the world over, like, lads just don't talk about it. I feel we'll get, like, you know yourself, in the States, people are mad about baseball and, you know, and American football. In Ireland, people are mad about rugby, and like the lads will get into fights in the pubs over it. It's like, oh, Jesus, lads, come on. Like, but when it comes to something really important, like their infertility, they just close up and they shut down. And I was really thinking about it, and I had a conversation with a journalist here in the UK, wait for it, about 2 weeks ago. And she was saying in our conversation, this primal drive in men. And when she said the word primal, it was like a jigsaw in my mind. Oh, well, yeah, like the last piece going to my mind. So this is the concept I see at the moment, is that boys, men, the world over, we're all taught that it's a race. It's always a race between guys. So largely, if you think at a primal level, there used to be guys kind of competing to be with different women for the tribe and all the rest of it. So you kind of apply that to the 21st century. We've replaced it with the car you drive, the size of the engine, their status, their job, where they live, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of, so that race is kind of, but it's still going on. Like, you see the way guys will race each other at traffic lights. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so stupid, you know?
It's bad. It's bad. Kevin sees that a lot in Miami. I know that.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Kevin always wins. That's why.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you.
It's like, figure see you, losers. But I was kind of thinking about it, and then I kind of see it as when a guy learns that he's infertile, this primal part of your brain, it's really kind of crude, but basically you're knocked out of this race with other men. And I think it's a very kind of crude concept at the moment, but is that a guy's knocked out of the race, he's kind of like, well, what's the purpose to my life? If I can't have children, if I can't pass my genes on, I'm out of that race. And I think this is my theory at the moment, is that men hide it. They don't want to talk about it because then at a subconscious level, they're not part of this bigger race that, to be honest, is a bit of a bollock. It's a bit of a waste of time. That is where I think at the moment. That's kind of my thoughts of it.
I think you put that in a very beautiful way, and I think it's kind of the reason why we're doing this, right? Like, all these guys thinking that it's a race, or that, you know, what is happening to them is something that they don't really want to share, or kind of like keep to themselves. But I think through talking that, you know, there's other people that are going on the same journey. I hope we'll, you know, get guys to, you know, learn about it, really, you know, take things into their own hands and be okay to talk about it. So, you know, why don't we go back? Let's go back to I think you said 2017, right? That's when you kind of went on this journey. Why don't you start talking about, you know, you and your wife, like, you know, how long were you guys trying to have kids? You know, what was, you know, the situation back then?
Sure. So Anna, that's my wife. She and I got married in 2015, and I was 35 at the time. And then I had my own business at the time. Like I used to be a wedding videographer. I used to shoot weddings all over Ireland, and like that's quite stressful. Like weddings, by the way, in Ireland, they're significantly longer than they are in the UK or sorry, the US. So they run on quite a long time. So I had quite a stressful job of running this business, and then we kind of decided in 2017, why don't we try and have a family? Because with in relation to our situation, Anna has multiple sclerosis. She has MS.
Okay.
So Anna had to come off her MS medication, which kind of gave us a window for her to try and get pregnant. So we are kind of under a bit more pressure than maybe other heterosexual couples, and or not, well, you know what I mean, other couples, and So Anna went for her checks, and you know, by the way, I had an undescended testicle as a child. And that, so for your listeners, I grew up in outside Belfast, and I went to the Royal Hospital, and they forced down the testicle. But what happened?
They did an orchiopexy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, sure. Okay. Yeah, that one.
Sorry, using doctor terminology. Yes. So they brought it down. Sorry.
Yeah. You're fine. So they brought it down, but it was never kind of followed up. You know, it never kind of like they thought maybe like 15 or 16. Let's see how Gareth's testicles are in the middle of puberty and where is he now in his early 20s. This just wasn't ever checked. And like I had no idea at all. And my GP, which is your general practitioner, my doctor, they said, okay, let's go do a semen analysis. So we did a semen analysis, and that came back 0. I got a text, and then I got a call. And the GP, she said to me, Gareth, you know, I wouldn't be too worried because sometimes an issue can occur in the lab. You know, there could be a mistake or something could happen,
right.
But it's okay. Now, in Ireland, they usually say you have to wait at least 2 to 3 months before you do your next semen analysis. That's just the way it is. But Anna pushed, saying, well, look, I'm off my medication. Yeah. That's 2 or 3 months more of me off my medication. Yeah. So they were still like, that's fine. That's grand. So I did another one a week or 2 later, and I got a call or a text to say 0 sperm in the sperm count or in the semen analysis, like 0.
Right.
And by the way, being XXY, I have a trait of a form of a photographic memory. So I can remember sitting in the other, not this room, the other place we lived in, and getting that text, and then ringing Anna. And Anna came home early from work, and I was just like, fucking hell. Like, I know I'm kind of flippant about it now, but it was just so overwhelming. You got this text, and then you're kind of going, well, what does that mean? And everything's that. Now, I had been told by the doctor, this is a very interesting thing, by the way. So the doctor had said to me, when I'd done my first semen analysis, Gareth, have you ever heard of Klinefelter syndrome? I was like, no. Like, is that some dude in Germany? Like, no. Like, I was like, no. Because she said, you know, you could have some of the traits. You had an undescended testicle as a child, and you're very tall. Like, you wouldn't know from looking at me. I'm 6'3". I'm really tall. Okay. But I didn't kind of question the height growing up because my mother's now dead, but my mum was tall and my dad is tall. He's 6'1", I think he is. And I know my brothers are tall, so I never really thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then our doctor then said, why don't you go and see a urologist? So we paid privately. So for people watching, I said to you guys, but the health system in Ireland works more like it does in the UK. It's quite different from the States. So we didn't go through our insurance or anything like that. We just paid to see a consultant. And we went to a small clinic west of Dublin by about 30 miles. And we went in to see the urologist. And I remember going in, sitting down in the room. He had all these weird little money trees in his office. Right. Okay. I was all covered but they're all covered in dust. And I was thinking, that's kind of weird to have all this. You're making like a medical a mental practitioner, and you got all these plants covered in dust, you know, in your office. It's not very clean. Anyway, but and it's a real stupid thing to remember. And
and
I was just sitting there, and he said, "Do you know that scene in Thelma and Louise?" This is the way I kind of describe it now to people to visualize. Do you know the scene they're about to just fuck themselves over that cliff?
Yeah. Hold hands. They hold hands and then they ride off the cliff.
Yeah. Well, I was like in that seat, but didn't know I was about to go off that cliff. So no concept at all. And I was kind of sitting there, and I was to my right. He did like you guys, and we straight ahead. And he said, "Gareth, I always like to be honest with my patients." And I said, "Okay, great." Like I thought he was going to say, "You take this medicine, you go on this program of drugs, you do this, that, and we'll have an answer." And he looked me directly in the eyes and he said, "Gareth, it doesn't work downstairs. You need to get over that and move on."
Interesting comment.
That's
a very interesting comment, because as we know that there's a lot of things that can be done and should be done for patients in your scenario. And how were you feeling in that moment?
At that moment, like I was kind of like sitting there, and it's like, no, did he say that to me? No, he didn't. Did he? And I kind of always questioned myself, and I started to retreat within myself. I remember really, really, very, very visually, my heart was beating really fast, and my hearing went, so I couldn't really hear properly. And I would kind of describe it as almost like an out-of-body experience. Like I was in the room, but I wasn't there. A lot of really aggressive, graphic imagery I'm trying to articulate for this conversation. So I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, I'm a nice person. Yeah. There are terrorists in the world that are killing people. I'm a nice person. Why do I not have sperm? What have I done? You know, all this kind of quite extreme end of the argument. And then it's like, and then he said, he didn't actually say that to me, did he? No, he didn't. Did he? No. He did. And it's like this internal monologue. And it's like, how could you say that to someone? How could you actually just turn around and just crush someone's future like that in a horrible, aggressive way? And Anna asked a few questions, and he was just equally unhelpful to her. Like she asked something, she told me after, she asked her something about, well, could we adopt? And he was like, no, you can't. You've got MS. And he, in other words, and he, by the way, he did, really unhelpful. And he didn't really properly examine. He looked at some of the kind of the charts that had been sent over from the GP and the semen analysis.
Right.
And we then left there, and I remember walking outside of the hospital, turning to the right, and you can see the Dublin Wicklow Mountains in the sky. And it's like, this is the way my brain works. And Anne and I completely broke down, like completely imploded. Like, and at that moment, we kind of went home. The next week or two was quite. It's kind of dated, fuzzy. I would describe it maybe in my mind. What I started doing was I actually completely retreated within myself. I was saying I started playing a lot of violent computer games. I got really good at Call of Duty. They were really good at that. Right?
That's a great game. Love that game.
I got, oh my God, I've mentioned before, they should repay me. I've mentioned the one, it's Assassin's Creed. God, I got so good at that one.
That's also a good game too. Enjoyed it. Very enjoyed it.
So there's a one called Black Flag, and you're kind of sailing around south of Florida. And
as a pirate.
You're a pirate, right? Yeah. Oh my God, I went to town on that. I built the best fucking battleship going, blowing everyone up. But it was a form of escapism, and I started drinking more alcohol as well. And Anna, the reason we have a family now, I know I've kind of ruined the punchline, but is that I don't like referring to it as a project, but I didn't know anyone. None of my close friends had ever experienced what I was going through. And we're here, like the town we live in, there's 5-6 pubs in the town for a population of 4,000, so it's quite good. And Anna suggested to me one day, she said, Gareth, why don't you just go across and get a pint in one of the pubs? And we all know alcohol doesn't solve your problems, but I was just I was just sitting by myself. You know, I was editing weddings, and it was very difficult working these projects. It's my own business. Like, I didn't have work with anyone else. So it was largely by myself, day in, day out, day in, day out. And I went to say, okay. So I went, right, okay. So I went across, and I got a pint, and I was just sitting there. And this guy came up to you that I kind of know. He's in a local band. And he said, Gareth, what's the story? How you getting on? How you getting? And like, you can guess, I'm quite a chatty person. And I was quite low. I said, I got some really bad news recently. I found out I'm infertile. And I just said it like that. I found out I have no sperm, something like that. And he was quite taken aback because I was just so honest about it. I just said it. And I didn't really know this guy. And he said, and his reaction was, it was along the lines of, trying to articulate what he said. It can't be really that bad. It was kind of what he was trying to articulate. And I kind of exploded on him going, did you not fucking hear what I said? I don't have any sperm.
Yeah.
And I realized, immediately I apologized. I was like, it's not your fault. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. And he was totally fine about it. Like, he could understand why I was a bit brittle. But what we then did, Anna found a website called rollercoaster.ie as the pregnancy and family website. And we ended up going to London. So London flight time for us is about 55 minutes to London from Dublin. Really close. And we went to see a guy called Jonathan Ramsey. And Jonathan Ramsey has been working with Klinefelter syndrome people since the 90s. So
Can I ask you a question? At what point were you diagnosed with Klinefelter? Because I didn't, in the story thus far, you were told you were infertile. What was the workup when you had the no sperm to get to the diagnosis of Klinefelter? So it sounds like by the time you were at home in Ireland, you got the diagnosis of Klinefelter. Is that correct?
No, I was just getting to it.
No,
So that's okay.
Sorry.
Oh my God.
So Gareth, so at this time, all you knew was that you had no sperm in the ejaculate, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Do they do any testosterone levels on you? Anything at this point?
From my memory, no. I'm being honest. I honestly can't remember about that. Like, I did go for regular blood checks and stuff like that.
Right.
But you will find this interesting about Klinefelter syndrome. So we went to see Jonathan Ramsey. He did look at me, and I remember so clearly. He put his hand on my shoulder, this particular shoulder, and he said, "Gareth, we're going to do everything humanly possible to help you and Anna have a baby." And there's this massive pressure just lifted off me. It was just amazing because we'd met this other medical professional. And he's been such a cunt to me. Like, he was horrible to me, like, he was such a dick. And then we met this other guy, and he was like completely different person. And what he said was, okay, Gareth, and I don't know if you know this about XX. Well, yeah, so I'll just explain. So it's referred to officially as Klinefelter syndrome, but I myself prefer the term XXY because you'll find it's interesting from a language point of view is that when people hear, oh, you're a Klinefelter syndrome person, when they hear the word syndrome, they kind of see you, my experience is they kind of see you in that you're kind of slightly flawed person. Is a kind
I think that's a very interesting point that I've never thought of.
Yeah.
Kevin, you ever think of that? Like, that's a really insightful thing,
It's enlightening, especially,
Yeah.
I mean, me and Justin, we take care of a lot of, XXY patients. And, I guess, Justin, I never really kind of thought about that. I just, we just kind of addressed it as like Klinefelter syndrome. Right?
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes back to what you were alluding when you were dealing with it in your hometown, or you didn't have a name for it yet, obviously. But I think it makes that conversation with your friends, your family, your loved ones a little bit easier, right? Like, when you were back, and this goes back to what we started from in the beginning, like, you were in a hard place obviously, because you saw, this sign of fertility is obviously, it's a sign for many men of their masculinity and what makes them a man and what makes them who they are. And when someone, I'm sure, obviously, fortunately, I have not experienced that, but, someone, when you're having a family planning, you're thinking it was going to go right. You thought it was going to go perfect, right? And then someone comes in and says, it's not happening. I can't imagine, right? Like, did you felt probably less like a man, and that's probably why you didn't want to talk to people, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I was going for counseling in my life, and I'm a real advocate for counseling. I think men are after help. It makes such a difference. And it actually kind of connects into what you just said in your question there. So you'll find this interesting. So I'm one of originally 4 children. I'm the oldest of 4 boys. And after my mother died, and then we had the recession, the worldwide recession we all remember.
2008,
my mum was like, I would kind of say it's like the glue that held our family together. And when my mum died, I was living in Dublin. I moved back up to Belfast because my mum had terminal cancer. And then the crash came, and then blah, 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 blah. I couldn't move back down to Dublin, and I had started my business and all the rest of it. But there was a lot of kind of fragments started to appear in my family, my immediate family. And it's up to the point that actually I have immediate family members who are narcissists in my family. And they're quite dangerous narcissists. And I was going to therapy about that. And to this day, I still have not told my family. Now, they are very much aware. You'll find this interesting. They will be very much aware of what I'm doing, because I did an interview with, I'll get on to the guy who founded this last year. And between August of last year and February of this year, I did 14 radio interviews.
Amazing. It's amazing. That's very impressive. It's a great thing that you're doing that.
But I didn't tell them because they would absolutely ridicule me. They would say, Gareth's not a proper man. Gareth, it's a load of balls with Gareth. Really invalidating and just been dicks. So I did not tell them.
I'm sorry.
And it's okay because my life is better without them. And I get to meet amazing people like you guys. So there's a lot of positives I kind of see. I know I kind of jumped backwards in the storyline, but that will kind of just fill in another gap.
No, I mean, you're right. Listen, it's friends, it's personal. Like, you have personal pressure. You have this feeling of responsibility to the partner. Then your, family always asks, if once you get married, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? That brings that extra pressure. Then your friends are having kids, and then your friends are saying, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? It kind of just stockpiles, and then you close in. It's a lot of pressure. We get it. I get it.
The fertility journey, I think, just in itself, people are, just like Justin said, when are you having kids? You hit a certain age in the relationship. When are you having kids? It's stressful for you and the partner, especially when things aren't going the way that are expected. And things don't go as they're expected. That's why there are infertility specialists. And especially with what you were going through, that builds on it, and not being able to necessarily freely share it with a lot of people at that time. I think, I can't even imagine, everything you were going through. Why don't let's reframe it though. Let's bring it back to Dr. Jonathan Ramsey. So you got to London, and, this guy sounds like a fantastic physician, really good bedside. So what happens there? Sure.
So Jonathan Ramsey, you guys are probably aware there's a lot of XXY people are very visual. The way we think, we're complete visual thinkers. So he was very much aware of that. So he drew a picture of my testicles, my testicles and a penis and all the rest of it. Because I find it quite difficult being in a hospital environment. My mother died in a hospice. And because of the way my memory works, I remember when my mum died. Thank you. But this is all connected in, and I didn't know at this stage the way my brain works, the way certain trauma. So it's like an Achilles heel of having a form of photographic memory. Right. You remember all the bad shit too. So he said, Gareth, we're going to do an FNA. So an FNA, for your listeners, is a fine needle aspiration. And it's very similar. You guys are probably aware of the micro-teasy.
Yes.
So, yeah. So for your listeners, if everyone can imagine, you've got your penis. It's very crude. So they're straight. Lads like to see it straight. I just, where did that come from? And you got your testicles. So so Dr. Ramsey said, sometimes, Gareth, what can happen is there can be a blockage within the tube within the penis. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the fine needles and we're going to go to the testicles and try and extract sperm. Okay. So this is the great thing about with Jonathan Ramsey. He treats you as an equal. He doesn't see you as like subhuman or anything kind of stupid like that. He said, most men, Gareth, if they have the ability to produce sperm, because XXY is a spectrum, it affects men in different ways, that if they have sperm, it drops off in their mid-20s. And I was 37. So he said, I feel we kind of know the answer, but let's just have a look. So I went in for surgery. I was in recovery. And this is where you guys will find very interesting. So he came into the room. I remember when he came into the room where Anna was. I said, I've got some great news. He said, Gareth, you are the first person in the world that I know of, or any of my other colleagues that I work with around the world. You're the very first person I've ever met who in their mid to late 30s still has the ability to produce the building blocks that build sperm. You're the very first person we've ever found.
Cool.
So I kind of thought you guys would really find that interesting.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And so at this point, you were diagnosed with Klinefelter's then?
Yes, he said he would describe me as a mosaic of Klinefelter's, which means I have XY and XXY sex cells. Right. I have both.
Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah. So Gareth, I'll pause there. Right. So Justin, do you want to give like a little just a very brief background on like XXY or Klinefelter's?
So yes, XXY Klinefelter's, is actually, it's more common than people would think. About 1 out of 500 to 600 people have it. And my mentor over at Northwestern here, Dr. Brannigan, who deals with a lot of Klinefelter's or XXY patients, there's a football field, American football field here called Soldier Field. That's where the Chicago Bears play. There's 60,000 people there. So if you were in that stadium it was a full stadium, you would have at least 100 people in that stadium, data-wise, to have Klinefelter's. That's how common it actually is. So, 47XXY is the common type. Like you said, you have a mosaic, which is probably somewhere in between there. Some of your sex cells have the XY, some of them have XXY. But yeah, the classic, what we call phenotype or characteristics of Klinefelter's, tall stature, as you said, gynecomastia, which is potential breast development, smaller testicles. But a lot of men go, because of this mosaic and because of the way that, Klinefelter's or XXY presents, is a lot of people just never know. They just really never know, like you, they just don't know because it presents in so many different ways. And so it's really interesting. And can you just tell us now, when you got that diagnosis, how did you feel and what did you do at that point? I know we're going a little back, but I do want to know, once they told you had Klinefelter's, was that a relief to have something like a diagnosis behind it? Or was that more frustrating? Because I do find that, and I don't know if Kevin can agree, I'm sure he does, is when we have diagnosed men of your age or maybe a little bit younger with Klinefelter's that they didn't know that they had it, there was a sense of relief, like, okay, I have, like, there's an explanation behind what's going on. How did you feel at that time?
That's, so it was, when he told me, it was both excitement of like, wow, I might have sperm after all. Right. And it was almost like fingers to that urologist who was basically, I know I swear a bit, but it was, it's like, fuck you, and it was kind of, I don't like to kind of put into like a pigeon box or like a kind of like, I'm not articulating. I don't like to be kind of put into a labeled into a little box. But when he said that to me, and this is a real relief for me, was it wasn't my fault. That was a real,
absolutely.
You know, like being born XXY, it's not your fault. It's just that's just what happens.
It truly happens randomly. It's
Yes.
a random event that happens. This was no one's fault. This just happened during the fertility event of your parents.
Yeah,
totally random.
yeah.
No one's fault.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Like my mum did mention. I haven't really talked about this in podcast, but you guys might find this interesting. My mum miscarried within a year, I think, of me being born. My mum had another pregnancy, and I remember her telling me that pregnancy or failed, or part of it failed, and then I kind of appeared. So I don't know if there's any link to that. Maybe that's just a random separate avenue.
I think it's kind of a random thing. I wouldn't look too much into that.
But I'm very proud of the person I am. You know, I would actually change myself. You know, it was such a relief, like because finally there was a bit of an answer. And Anna, like I didn't really know much about XXY at this stage, so Anna very much kind of shielded me from it, because at the time when you put in Klinefelter syndrome into Google, because we're so visual, all the images that appeared were kind of the extreme end of what could happen as an XXY person. And I never did that. She said, I do not want you looking at images, because I was already in quite a vulnerable place as it was. So I just said, okay, if Anna thinks it's bad for me to look at these images, I'm not going to look at them, because I would then remember those shots, not realizing this was a trait of being XXY.
I think that's a great point. I think it's a great point because, and that's something also we don't think about, and I mentioned that before, is, you know, XXY comes in so many flavors and a spectrum, as you know, but when we learn as doctors and medical practitioners, they give us the most classic look of what Klinefelter's is, which, as Kevin and I know, is often really not the case. And as you also know, obviously. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point in terms of educating patients or people who do have XXY. I can see how that can be very bothersome. I've never thought about that either. It's a really excellent point.
That's okay. Yeah. So the fertility thing. So this is what you guys will find very interesting. So I've been trying to find it. You guys in the States use a different testosterone level to Ireland and the UK.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I could find the scale so I could give you a comparison.
You could just say low or high or whatever. That's fine.
Was it above or was it below the level where it's supposed to be considered?
That's a good approach, Kevin. I like these visual thinkers. We'll go for pints.
Sounds good.
So the guys, I'll just use the number anyway, and then it'll kind of, as a visual, you can then visualize what it looks like. Yep. So I was operating on a range of 11 to 13 with my natural testosterone. And they said that the natural level for an XY guy was 19 to 24. Okay. Now, just to kind of give you a size operating maybe around 35% less than other XY men. Now, remember I said I wasn't even aware of it. To kind of give you an idea of how my body had adapted to operating on significantly less testosterone was I cycled the length of Ireland in 2013 in 6 days to raise money for children with cancer.
Wow.
That's awesome. 426 miles we did in 6 days.
Yeah.
It was all downhill. So it was easy.
But that's a great point because, you know, a lot of men who may have may have low testosterone with XXY may not really know because, you know, that's where they've been their whole lives and that's how their body functions. Does that mean that we can't get it higher and maybe make you feel a little bit better or whatnot? No, I mean, but it's a really excellent point because sometimes you're not symptomatic, even though your testosterone is lower. But, you know, did you have things like less body hair or, you know, less energy and stuff like that you did notice?
No, the the energy was never really a problem. Now, like I was saying, I used to be a wedding videographer. Like the average length of a wedding for me in Ireland used to be 16 hours.
Jesus, that's a long wedding.
That's a very long wedding.
Yeah, but
in the states, yeah, I don't think people would be able to stay.
Oh, you guys are pussies. You wouldn't last long. Yeah, because weddings in Ireland, like they'll run to 3 or 4 in the morning.
Jeez.
Like they'll run really late here. Like I never stayed that late. Like you don't want to be there. Like at the end, it'd be like the end of Braveheart. It'd be awful. It'd be stressful. But I used to stay to 11 at night, and at that stage, the party's only getting going.
Right.
You know, but the tiredness wasn't a thing really for me. Like it was funny. I did have a shave yesterday, but my facial hair used to grow really slowly. Like I could get away for like not shaving for like 9 days. Like it just didn't grow.
Right. Gareth, I get away with like not shaving for a whole year. You know? That's just how us Asians just, you know.
I shaved this morning, so.
I thought it was a barrow. You just color that in there. Just a little kind of cooler. So I kind of, you know, like my big blades would last forever. You know, like it was ridiculous.
Wait, so Gareth, so you know they're telling you your testosterone's like a little bit on the lower side, and you're starting to like kind of like look back. You're like, okay, maybe I'm feeling some, maybe I'm not. Did they talk to you about taking any replacement meds or anything that you should go on at this time? And like, is this before your surgery, after surgery?
Sure. So I would found out what my natural testosterone level was before a blood test, and then. You guys would know the proper terminology. I then was tested for Klinefelters through a special genetic blood test.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite expensive. It was like £400 or £500. But I don't know what that is in dollars. But so that then confirmed I was an XXY person. But I learned I was a mosaic when I came out of surgery after the FNA.
Okay.
But the reason I mentioned the testosterone to tie it in is that when I had that first operation, my natural levels crashed to 4.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And I was really exhausted. Like where we live, it's the same town we were in 3 or 4 years ago. I can't think what it's in yards because I think in meters. So it was about 300 meters to go across the bridge to our local convenience store to buy milk or bread. And that was too far. To tie my shoelaces was a major deal. Like I was so fucked. Like that's a nice way of putting it. I completely physically worn out. And my bowel movements just accelerated. Like they went up really, really high. And then I went on, and by the way, just to mention again, everybody thinking about how fit I was. In 2016, I ran my first marathon.
Jeez,
again,
man,
on 35 to left.
Unbelievable shape.
Yeah.
I was 36 when I did that.
So, you know, you were down, and that's one thing that, you know, when we do operate on testicles, that's something that is always a potential risk. You know, there can be a little bit of a hit to a testicle that can potentially drive your testosterone even lower. And at this point, what were the next steps for you, though? I'm assuming you started to feel better. They were giving you medicine. What medicine were they giving you at this point to optimize your testosterone?
Sure. Now, the actual names, the actual products or drugs I was taking, I've forgotten. But I was rubbing gels onto my tummy, onto my leg, these clear gels to increase it up. And because, by the way, I was quite fit, like I'm very fit now as well, but Anna would have to inject me 3 times a week into my stomach with testosterone. Yeah, there you go. And like sometimes it would bleed and sometimes it would sting like hell. I was having to do this 3 times a week. I'm really bad with needles. And then getting my bloods checked. Is it my blood count? You guys use blood count? And regular blood tests. And it was just so exhausting.
It's a lot.
It was exhausting.
Kevin, can you want to just quickly explain what he was taking for our listeners? I think we both know is testosterone HCG, how that works.
Yeah. So there's a whole, so, you know, first off, you know, there, I don't want to really get too much into the science of it, but like you need good testosterone, especially in the in the testicle area, to have good sperm production. That's just one of the principles of thinking that us infertility specialists have. And so there are different medications that you can take to really try to boost up the testosterone in that area. The number one thing, though, we have to keep in consideration, though, as Justin will attest, is that, testosterone that's given wholesale, just, injected or, high volumes of it can suppress your system from making it, right? So you have to make sure to have a good balance and have a good way of ensuring that you don't shut down your natural system and just kind of really ramp up your natural system. And so one of these medications is HCG, right? HCG will increase testosterone levels up in your testes. There's a myriad of other medications you could take. You could take Clomid. I'm sure it's one of the medications
I took that one. I took Clomid.
Yes.
It's a pill that you take, and that can have, certain side effects to it. But, it's mainly these two medications they can. I'm sure, Justin, you can say other physicians may employ like a little bit lower volume of exogenous testosterone that they use in this whole combination of things. But for the most part, it's really the HCG that you're using to try to drive up.
And that was what you were taking. You were injecting yourself 3 times a week with the HCG. You were probably putting on a little bit of a testosterone to get your general testosterone levels up to make you feel better. The HCG potentially is protective, and it also tells your testicles to make natural testosterone along with things like Clomid. So you had a good balance of things trying to maximize your testosterone levels while also trying to maximize your fertility and your ability to make sperm. So, and how long were you on this stuff for?
I was on this stuff for months and months because my levels were so low and I had to climb such a massive ladder. And you'll find this interesting. So in August of, it would have been 2018, by the way, I had actually decided to close my business because shooting weddings is very stressful, and I really wasn't physically in the best state. And basically I've done it for 13 years, and I want to do something else. There's only so many times you look at people in a white dress, Sorry. But I shot my last wedding in the west of Ireland, and exactly a week later, I was in hospital getting my appendix out.
Oh, bad timing, huh? When it rains, it pours.
So
curveball there.
Yeah, I was in hospital for 8 days, and again, because I think the health system works differently in Ireland. Like, the state covers that. We didn't have like insurance and all that kind of stuff. So, but that pushed back my micro TZ. I can't remember the micro testicular. I've forgotten the rest.
Microdissection, testicular sperm extraction.
There you go. And we basically now for that.
And basically what we do in that situation is we take a microscope, we look under the microscope. Sometimes we look under the microscope, we try to find the sperm or the parts of the testicle that look like they have the most sperm or potential for sperm, and then we extract them and hope that there is sperm in them. Now, Kevin, I know Kevin has some data kind of about Klinefelter specifically on, how many men have sperm in their ejaculate as Klinefelters or XXY, and the success of the sperm extraction. Kev, what's some of those numbers?
Yeah, just to give our listeners some background, generally with Klinefelter syndrome, in the literature, approximately 8 to 10% of men will have sperm in their ejaculate. One of the things that, I'm interested in, as well as my mentor here, is just looking, especially with the advent of more testing, we are actually identifying more patients with XXY earlier on, especially in the adolescent phase. And these are one of the things that's a little bit more interesting, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, but in the adolescent phase, asking a young person to give a sample is a very tough thing. And there's a lot of implications. It requires a lot of team efforts. I know Dr. Pippa Sandster out in London is also very interested in it, but it's really a team event. But one of the things that we found was that a lot of adolescents, you're just not seeing the ones that are actually getting diagnosed at this young age are not having any sperm in the ejaculate. So, do we ask these kids to keep, providing samples over and over? I don't know if there's that much utility to that, but that's something that we definitely look at. And I think that really shines on this whole XXY. We're still learning so much about it. Timing of medications, when to give it, is it helping? And just like you touched upon, your age. What's the implication of the age when we undergo these sperm retrievals? But in general, overall, 10% of men do have sperm in their ejaculate when we look at these.
And those that don't move on to exactly what you did, and they get the microtesy. So tell us about that experience. How did the day of surgery? What's going through your mind? How does it go? And we'll take it from there.
Sure. So you guys can kind of guess I like having the chat. It's something like it always kind of, I always like talking to people from all walks of life. It kind of helps to keep you grounded. And I was walking in, I remember it was the Hammersmith Hospital. I think Hammersmith Hospital again. Was it? That's not, it doesn't matter, the hospital. But I was going in, you'll find it interesting. So we're going in just before the surgery, and we're in this kind of place where they kind of put on the monitors on your body and everything like that. And they're trying to put the thing into my veins.
Yeah,
the thing for the medication.
IV, yeah.
The IV. Yeah. Again, really bad, because you will find this interesting. So I've made a lot of insightful thoughts about being XXY. Because I'm so visual, I then visualize the actual piece going into my vein, and it's really, really visual. So I imagine the blood and then this thing going within my vein.
Yeah.
It really freaks me out. And because they connect me up to the heart machine, the woman said, "Oh my God, I've made a mistake on this arm. I'm going to have to go and get the person who puts you to sleep." I've forgotten that person's official title. There you go. On cue, Justin is there. She said, "I've made a mistake. I'll be back." And I could hear my heart rate slowing down. It was kind of cold environment where we were, and he came rushing in. And he said, "You need to sit down." I said, "Oh no, I'm fine." He said, "If you don't sit down, you're going to faint," because my heart rate was dropping.
You're getting nervous. It can be nerve wracking. It can be the process. Obviously, it can be very stressful. It can be nerve wracking. So you get it. You go under surgery. You wake up, and what does the doctor tell you?
Okay, so by the way, for yourself and your listeners, Jonathan Ramsey had said ahead of time, he said, "Gareth and Anna, we can't put all our eggs in one basket."
Right.
That if your body is able to absorb all this testosterone and make sperm, that is going to work, because we just don't know. So he gave a very realistic expectation of no more than 20%. He was very realistic with that. So we then looked ahead of time at using donor sperm. So that was our backup plan. Now, when I came out of surgery, I remember the clock. Imagine a big round face clock.
Yes.
And the clock hit it was, I can't remember the exact hour, but I remember where the clock was. It was 22 on the clock. And there was a second going around into the 60-second of the minute. And the clock by mind froze, but I could still see the clock going round.
Right.
So because the consultant came in and said, "Gareth, we've had a look, and unfortunately, there's no sperm. Unfortunately, your ability to produce sperm has diminished." But they said it in a really kind of nice way. It wasn't a very cold way.
Right.
And I can still see that clock, as if the second hand is trying to get past. And it's just sitting there, but I can see the clock going round.
Right,
because
I know what you're saying.
Before this, I was still thinking I was fertile, and then after this, I'm infertile. It's a very visual, cold way of seeing it, but that's the way my brain works. But it was I would say it was a lot of relief, because this is now my third operation in a year.
Yeah.
I've been through so much, and it was a kind of sense of closure and we had done everything we could. He's still my consultant, and I'm with one of the best consultants in the world who knows about Klinefelters. And, you know, but it was closure for me on that, in relation to that part of our journey, if such, you know.
I mean, Justin, I mean, I'm sure you could share, like, as Gareth is telling us from the patient side, giving the, you know, sharing that with our patients whenever we don't find sperm. It's tough, huh?
It's incredibly difficult. And, you know, it is akin to almost talking about a death in many ways to many people, right? I mean, that, you know, potential to have a future child biologically that may be yours.
Right.
But, you know, I think what you said is so important, Gareth, is that you had a sense of closure because, you know, you did everything in your physical ability to give yourself the best chance. You know, what my mentor likes to say is, we like to say, you know, you had your day in court. We gave you every opportunity, and we worked together to give you that best opportunity to you know, to maximize your potential, to give you that potential for a biological child. And unfortunately, as Kevin and I both know, and unfortunately, as you know, it doesn't always end up, you know, the way that we want it to, especially with XXY patients. You know, the success rate in these microtesies, you got a 20%, which it is a very fair number. It could be, you know, up to 45, sometimes 50%, but that's still not, you know, that's not what people want to hear. And it's unfortunately the way that it is. And we have a lot of technology, and we heard it through your story, that we have a lot of things that we can try to do, whether it's surgery, medicine, all these things to optimize you. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's things that are out of our control. I just want to go back to, you know, you had this diagnosis, you mentioned the discussion of a donor before, and, you know, going into your surgery, at what point was that brought up, and how did you feel about it? Obviously we'll get to after the surgery results, but how did you feel about it at first when you were talking about it with your doctor about potential donor sperm and having a child that may not potentially be your biological child?
Sure. That's a great question. Well done.
Thank you.
So I was already kind of on the fence about it anyway, because I'd learned that I was potentially infertile. Right. So I'd actually had quite a large amount of, well, no, not a large amount of time, but certainly a good few months for it to kind of formulate in my head. Also, by the way, which I would recommend to people, and people are going to go, oh, that's not for me, is I got back into my running.
Yeah.
Like I'm running, like I'm a long distance runner. Like I've actually ran 2 further marathons around 2018, 2019, done it.
I've run 0 marathons. I don't think I could run one.
But the running for me, like it's, you would kind of process stuff about how I was feeling about using donor sperm.
Yeah.
And the way my brain works, I would go out running and I would listen to music for a little bit, and then I take my headphones off because it just irritates me. And where we live about 35 miles from Dublin, so it's in the countryside here. And I'd run on these back roads, and there's a lot of studs around here, like big, like horse studs and stuff. And sometimes you see the studs, or not the studs, the stallions, the mares in the fields, and you go up and give them a pet and all the rest of it. But it's a really beautiful part of Ireland we live in. And I would go out running, and I would kind of play these different scenarios in my mind of things I was thinking. But when I ran, I would process a lot of thoughts. And you would find this very insightful. I remember a lot of my dreams. Okay. So when I got that news originally, I should have said this, but I forgot. When I got that news from the original urologist, and around the time we started to see Jonathan Ramsey, I had a repeating dream. So I had a repeating dream outside our home here. I had my arms wide out, and a child of about 1.5 to 2, not a boy or girl, just a child, would start to run towards me.
Wow.
And I have my hat. Okay, right. But this is where it sometimes gets very hard for me, is that the child would start to fade, and the child would just fade into thin air. And I'd be sitting there with my arms wide open.
That's profound.
And I had this repeating. for repeating over and over again. And I had another dream that I was up in the local playground here in our town, and I was kind of sitting there, and I brought my child in again, and these people came up to me and they said, "Why are you sitting in this playground?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm just here with my child." I said, "No, you didn't come in here with a child. You came in by yourself and you sat down and you're looking at our child. And if you don't leave, we're going to ring the cops." And I was chased out of the playground because I had entered in my mind with a child. And then these people were saying, "You came in by yourself." And I had those two dreams repeating for weeks and weeks and weeks. And from talking to my therapist, she said that is your brain, Gareth, working through that trauma of not potentially having biological children. And I know men don't talk about it, so that's why I feel my experience would definitely be of benefit to you guys and older men watching this about that.
Dude, thank you for sharing that with us. I know those are really, those mean a lot to you, and it's such a tough, it's I can't even imagine it, but just going through that, hearing about the infertility, making a decision on donor sperm, whether to use that or not. I think these are so much that you're going through, so much. And for you to really share your thoughts, I wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it, So I kind of go forward a bit in the timeline again. So Jonathan Ramsey said you need to look at donor sperm. And I kept putting it off because what happened was I was on these websites and, I was trying to find problems with the donors because I was so kind of in such turmoil with myself and how I felt. So if I found problems with these other donors, and these donors are amazing, both egg and sperm donors, those are fucking amazing people. They are so incredible. And people who don't know about infertility, I've heard people say really cruel things. And it's like, you don't fucking know what you're talking about. Like I've heard people say they do it for the money. They fucking don't. They don't do it for the money. Sorry,
that's fine. No, you're good. You're good.
But I kept finding it really overwhelming. And then Anna would then kind of shortlist down certain things we were looking for. And we weren't kind of like, we didn't have a big, huge encyclopedia of requests, it wasn't something massive. And we contacted Jonathan Ramsey and said, is there anyone you can contact, or is there anyone that you work with that can help us? And he told us about this embryologist that I'm really good friends with, by the way, called Erica Foster. And Erica, you'll find this interesting. So we contacted Erica. My photograph on my LinkedIn profile is still the same. And I contacted her through LinkedIn, and she saw my photograph on LinkedIn, and we did a we call on the phone here. And she said, it's really weird, but Gareth, Anna, I have a donor that looks really like Gareth, because I can see what Gareth looks like on his LinkedIn profile.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's very interesting.
So we have to ring her back because we forgot to ask how tall the donor was. So we rang her back, and he's actually even taller than me. He's 6'5".
Wow.
He's even taller than me. But there is a really good resource. Actually, you guys would find it interesting. I'm not sure if there's a US equivalent. There's a thing in the UK that we went to called the DCNetwork.org. I can send you a separate link. And it's a UK-based, I wouldn't say it's a charity maybe, but they kind of talk about donor-conceived people, and they run these conferences and events. And we went to one in Belfast, and it was really transformative for my life. We met this guy called Danny, and his testicles had twisted, and he couldn't have children, and he got really emotional. Yeah. And then we met this woman, and it was a 2-day gig, and her name is Lucy, I think, and she is a donor conceived woman. And what she said, and it'll always stay with me because it's like, oh my God, it's so amazing. She said, the person who contributed the sperm to making me exist, he was like this amount of me. The man who raised me is my dad. The person who changed my diapers, who put me through college and all the rest of it, he's my dad. And I got really upset. Thinking about it now. It was so incredible because here was a donor conceived woman talking about her amazing dad, and she wasn't talking about the donor. She was talking about the dad who raised her. And like, we left there, and I was like on an absolute high, because here was, in my mind, a real viable plan. If I don't have sperm, we are definitely using donor, because this is amazing. This is just so incredible. I get so emotional about it. But it was amazing. It was really, really brilliant. So we then switched to using. We then went down the road of IVF after it came through that the operation hadn't worked for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that's amazing. Amazing. Yeah, it makes 100% sense. And that's a really wonderful story. And just to kind of bring that in, I know Kevin and I this is how we consult patients who are exactly in your situation. At the end of the day, if you want to be a father, you're going to be a father. And that is the most important thing. We have one way or another. You're going to be a father, and you're going to be a dad. You're going to be a family. It may not be the way that you anticipated, but I will tell you, and you will tell us in a bit, it's just as damn good, and it feels great. I've never had any patient complain about having a donor sperm. Once that baby is born, that is their child, 1,000%. Right, Kev?
That's correct. I think, Gareth, the way you really describe that, you're right. You're a father, right? You're a father for this child. Just how you described it, that this part, the donor sperm, was this much, but it really is being a family, being a father. And that's, truly everything that gives a lot in life. So why don't you bring us to where you're at now?
Okay.
So, guys,
sure.
utilize
So
the
you
donor
did the
sperm.
IVF, and what happened?
We did 3 rounds of IVF.
Okay.
3 rounds of IVF. The one thing I would actually say from doing the IVF, so the first one was deemed a chemical pregnancy. I'll be very brief. So it was a chemical pregnancy, which is a dreadful term. We did a second one, and I felt, looking back on the second round of IVF, that they definitely do in the UK. They probably do in the States. They can grade the quality of the embryos. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they said they found this particular embryo, and they said, "Oh my God, this is like the Tesla." I'll just pick it's like, it's the best one going. And so then we put that in Anna's uterus, and it failed. And I was really, really devastated, really hard, because we felt, fucking hell, this is going to happen. We're going to have a fucking baby, and that failed, and they didn't know why it failed. So what I would say to people going forward, if they have certain embryos, maybe not ask about the quality of the embryos, because if it fails and you hear it's the best, it's the equivalent of the best embryos going, and it fails, it's very hard on you, both emotionally and unless it's really difficult. That would be my one little piece of advice. We didn't do it. We went over to the States. Anna has a sister, lives in Bethesda. That was quite bittersweet, because we were with our nieces for Christmas in
Maryland.
Christmas 2018. Yeah, that's it. And then came back, and then we did our 3rd round of IVF, and we said, we don't want to know the quality of the embryos. This is your job. You guys pick the quality. And they said, well, we have to tell you. And we said, well, you said it would work last time, and you don't know why it failed. And that was really difficult for us. So you guys pick. But we want you to put back 2 embryos. And said, if you put back 2 embryos, it will increase your chances of twins by 40%. And our twins were born on the 8th of November in Ireland. And the kind of, in relation to the kind of the system here, a multiple birth pregnancy, so twins or more in Ireland, is seen as a high risk pregnancy.
Yes.
So yeah, so like it is standard for everyone. You get all your scans here for free, all your medical consultations, everything is covered by the state. Like we didn't pay anything, nothing.
Amazing.
And I was in hospital for 5 days, and it was all covered.
It's amazing.
Everything by the state, like yeah. So there's some kind of good things here. But what I would say now is, honestly, people watching this, you're going to think, he doesn't really mean that. Like, how can he say that? I'm really, really glad I don't have sperm. I really mean
Explain
that.
It.
Really mean it. Because we have the most, so we have twins. I'll refer to their nicknames. Abba, which is a girl. Tutu, which is a boy. That's their nickname, of course, because they can't pronounce their names properly. We have the most amazing twins who are here because I don't have sperm.
It's a wonderful way of putting it. It's a wonderful way of putting it.
That's beautiful.
And I mean, and
Beautiful.
you wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. This process, I mean, think about what you went through, right? And I think this is important, right? This is really, really important for people, and especially men and couples struggling with infertility who listen to this. Like, you went through hell, man. You really, you had multiple surgeries. You went to multiple doctors. You've traveled a lot. You know, your partner had to go through IVF. It's, you know, that part of the process is, like you said, incredibly stressful in itself. And your wife was injecting herself with all these medications. You guys went through all this stuff. And although, you know, those two children are not your biological children, and you said it yourself, you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because right now at this moment, you are a father to two beautiful children. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And like, my wife was talking about it one day, she did an interview with someone else, and Tutu is very like me. Like, he'll go up to people and try and have the chat. Like, he's only 2.5. He's not very good at the old chat, but he's very confident, and he'll go up, and we were out yesterday in this beautiful period house, really amazing. Do you guys know the Tudors series? The Tudors, that TV series a few years ago? Okay. Yeah. Well, that was all shot in Ireland, and we were in this house where they shot parts of the Tudors, and he walked. We walked. I can't think what it was in miles. We did about 6 kilometers yesterday. I pushed a double buggy all around the place, up and down the hills, and he walked easily 3 kilometers of that, easily.
Nice.
And he's only 2.5.
That's awesome.
And he's really like me, and. Sure, like, at times they're difficult, but any child's difficult.
Of course.
Any child's difficult.
I'm so proud of them. I love them so much, you know, and they're just I can't find the words to kind of describe how much I love them so much, because they're here because of a kind of an earlier setback within me. And I can only even see it as a setback because it's the way I was born.
Correct.
It wasn't ultimately my fault. And I've become quite empowered to speak out about male infertility, because I remember how difficult it was for me and not finding anyone to talk to. And I think in general, the more men ask for help, and definitely go for therapy, the better we'll all be. Like, you know, it's, like, I'm so grateful to have the chats with you guys. You know, like, you've learned something, I've learned something too. It's really insightful. And yeah, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. You probably have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, so I'm to finish off about the testosterone.
Yes.
The kind of so I'm on testosterone. TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy. And I got something right. So I have, my levels have slowly been going up, and you will find this interesting. They hit their highest, the first time ever that they're actually technically now in the category of where we should be for XY man.
Awesome.
And it took 5 years.
Do you feel different at that level?
My endurance levels have increased. So
Now you run like 2 marathons. Yeah, it was.
with my eyes closed, one backwards.
yeah, exactly.
Just the fun.
But yeah, no, it's important point. It is to maximize how you're feeling and the benefits of just general quality of life. We do in men with Klinefelters, or XXY, that we do try to more permanently keep you on some form of testosterone replacement therapy, just so you have those benefits. Because even though we're not treating you to have a kid anymore, we are treating you to just be the best you and be the healthiest you, and that's very important point that you do bring up. So I think that's really cool, and that's really excellent to hear that it's working for you at this point.
Well, there I was yesterday. It was 12,500 steps I did. I pushed a double buggy with 2.5 children in it, had a backpack on, all my gear, up and down a hill.
Calling ass, dude. Yeah.
Just crushing it.
And then I'm a stay-at-home dad, so we're very fortunate that my wife has a very good job. So I look after them, and I have them this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I get Thursday off, and then I'll have them Friday. And I know if I did not get that testosterone injection, I just wouldn't physically be able to do that. Because I remember how shattered I was when my levels are so low. Yeah. And I'm always I'm so thankful for professional medical people like you guys, like Jonathan Ramsey, like the one I'm on. I don't know if you guys know it. It's called Libido. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Sure. That's probably it's probably something we're familiar with. Just that name is
you can't think.
Yeah. The formal name of it is just something that we're unaware of.
I had my Libido injection. I had 1,000 milligrams in the top of my bum on Thursday. And my reaction when I get this, I'm sure it's different for other people, is my bowel movements increase the day of injection and the day after.
That's a new one.
Oh, is it?
I've never heard that.
I can't say that I really counsel patients on that.
So I went to the bathroom 3 times on Wednesday. Sorry, 3 times on Thursday and 5 times on Friday.
Damn, man.
So there you go.
Man.
You put that in your skill sample.
I would include that as a plus, though. On my next time I tell patients about TRT. For sure.
Just to kind of start wrapping this up, I think the first thing I want to ask is, you're wearing the shirt, living with XXY. What are some support groups or things that you like or outreach in ways that you think that guys struggling with these things can do to kind of feel that they're not alone and a better sense of community? Because it seems like you have done such an excellent job of not only, being a great spokesperson for XXY, but, making, normalizing infertility struggles in men.
Sure. So I'll tell you briefly, I know it's backwards in the camera. Anyway, so this is based in California. And the guy who set this up is a guy called Ryan Bergenti. And Ryan and I are really quite good pals, even though there's a huge 8-hour time difference between us. And my kids and I, we do video calls with them. And my kids think he's my brother because we talk so much. That's how close we are. But Ryan set this up.
Living with XXY for people just listening is the organization.
Yeah, and that's .org. And it's based in California. And Ryan, funny enough, our kids were born in November 19, and Ryan set this up the same month, and we didn't know each other then. Yeah. And Ryan's an amazing guy. Like he's an XXY guy as well. And he set up this foundation, this charity, kind of bring a new kind of support, a new awareness about more of the positive things about being XXY. Like I can tell you super briefly, I had a conversation, you'll find this very interesting, about how my brain works. So I found out my brain, I'm visual based, but my brain is based on geographical location. Okay. So I can actually look, like I've been in I've been in Bethesda. Like right now I can visualize that central four-way, I think it's four-way at the crossroads, and I can see where the Apple store is.
Right, I know what you're
when
saying.
I was there
yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. But I can then fill in the gaps of what the street was like, the way the road was, the cars that were parked, and it's like Street View in Google Maps, but that's running real time in my head. That kind of gave me an insight. And then I had an interesting conversation with a guy on Thursday in the UK, and we both have this. Well, he definitely has a really good sense of direction, so I can kind of look at certain things, like a certain building, and like Anna and I were in London, of course, for our treatment. I can look at certain photographs on my phone of memories, and I can step back into that memory and remember the buses going by, the sound, people on mopeds, like scooters, bicycles, all this kind of stuff. And until I started talking, this again, if people start talking about being XXY, they will learn that there are certainly advantages to it. Like I've tried to explain to other people who are not XXY the way my brain works. And it's like they go, oh yeah. And the lights are on, but there's no one at home because they can't, they can't articulate that because their brain doesn't work that way. But when I had that chat with that guy the other day, he got it, and we totally got it. And then we kind of realized here is a positive thing about being XXY.
Yeah, it's you can relate, and there's a sense of community, and there's people out there who've gone through what you've gone through, and have come out the other end just as happy as you. And there are so many success stories that I just wish we had people like you talking about it.
Well, anytime. Yeah, anytime. And like I cycled the length of Ireland and I did one marathon, and then I've done 2 further marathons, and I would have done another marathon only COVID came. But I'm going to hopefully do the Dublin Marathon again this year.
Gareth, that's one thing that I know you're crushing it, and me and Justin have a lot that we need to do. I must. we got to get in some marathons or some bike rides.
I'm going to run to the airport now, and I'll be there in 6 hours. I will get you traded.
Wait, so Gareth, so as a final message, so for men struggling with infertility, what message do you have for them?
I would say to ask for help. Either get a professional counselor, therapist. If you can't afford that, that's totally fine. Confide in someone that you can trust. Like getting this stuff out of your head is so important. Like I do feel definitely at a societal level, like there has to be a shift here. There's too much focus on men have to be strong. They have to live up to this. They have to hold it all together. Like that's not realistic. And for men who are out there struggling, if you need help, fucking ask for help. Like don't bottle it up. Don't drink it. Don't turn to, it happened to me. I turned to start drinking loads of booze, but then I had gone for therapy and I realized this was a bad practice, a bad avenue, and I was able then to go back into running. Like even guys who are maybe aren't as fit as me, maybe go outside for a walk. Maybe they live in the city, go into your local park, walk around the fountain, look around, look up, don't look down, look up at the pigeons are very nice, but look up at the birds. There might be squirrels around, you might see nature. Like, and I find being in those environments, it's really good for your head. And I would always say ask for help. I think the more people ask for help, the better they will be. And they can always message me as well.
I think that's a wonderful message. There is, exactly like you said, there is help. You're not alone. Everyone out there, like we said, these things are more common than you'd think. We just need to make sure people are aware that they're more common than they think. And, this has happened before. We have ways to treat you. We have ways to potentially help you. And, at the end of the day, like we found out today through Gareth, if you want to be a father, you're going to be a father and you're going to love it no matter what. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful outcome either way. So once again, Gareth, thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome, really enlightening. I think our listeners are really going to enjoy this.
Amazing.
How can people follow you on, I know you're on Instagram. How can they follow you or reach out if they have any questions?
Sure. well, it's kind of how I found you guys was on Instagram. So my Instagram title is pretty fly for XXY.
All-time name, all-time handle, and all-time Instagram
Awesome.
handle.
And that's a number 4. That's pretty fly 4. In case you put an FOUR, you go, fucking hell, there's no guy there. He doesn't exist. It's a number 4, XXY, and I post shots of me out with the kids and where I go, and I just, anyone who's feeling lost, they can reach out to me. Like I'm talking to right now, I'm working with a guy in California. I'm working with a guy in Russia, and I'm working with, who's the other guy? Oh, I forgot. There was another guy there, and I've forgotten where in the world he is. And these people are all over the world. And, the more we talk, the better it is. Like I'm really glad I am the way I am, because I know I'm helping others, and I do it because I'm helping others. And I'm helping you guys, and you're working with so many people.
Thank you again. So thanks again for everyone for listening. As always, you can listen to our podcast on any podcasting platform, iTunes, Spotify. Download, subscribe, give us a review, 5 stars. You can also find all of our information on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Man Up Pod. Kevin, what's our website where they can also find all of our stuff?
www.themanuppod.com.
That's right. So for Kevin and Gareth and me, thanks for listening. Until next time, have a good one, everyone.